The housing market is shifting.
Is it true?
Yes, it is. It's becoming more of a buyer's market in many areas in this country now. And this video, I'm going to tell you the 10 things you should never agree to when buying a home in today's market. So let's get into it. I had to make this list because I am hearing things that buyers are still willing to agree to in their home purchases. That was quite popular in the last 5 years during the pandemic market. And yet that's not the case so much anymore. So these are some things you should just never agree to. The first one, I talked about this one a lot. Never agree to waive your home inspection. I know I sound like a broken record. I know, I'm sorry, but people are still doing this. Why are we doing this? The market is softening in a lot of places, and I think people have this in their head. Oh, I want to make my offer look really good and strong. I'll just waive the whole inspection. No, we're not doing that. If you want to make your offer stand out, if you are going up against a few buyers, you can limit the home inspection, limit to look at structure, environmental, mechanical, and safety. That's all you got to do. You don't need to waive it completely. And I'm hearing that people are still doing this. Stop. Never agree to that. Moving on, number 2, we're never agreeing to overpaying for a house just to win the bidding war. Now, hear me out. There are still some pockets in the country where it's still a strong seller's market and there are multiple offers going on. But you don't need to be overbidding by, $50, $75, $100,000. No, we don't need to do that. And here is why. Because sometimes the terms are just as, or if not more important to the seller than you bidding $100,000 over asking. Have your buyer agent reach out to the listing agent to find out what is important to the seller to make this transaction happen. What will it take to get to the closing table? And if they specify that they would like a quick closing or an extended closing, the financing is important to them. Those things can weigh more than just the price. So trust me on this one, especially now that the market is shifting. Listen, I've heard of people who threw $100,000 over asking, overbid on a house and only to get rejected. Why? Because the terms weren't good. Period. End of story. If they'd had better terms, maybe they wouldn't have had to go $100,000 over asking. So we're not doing that anymore. Never overpay just to win the house. I'm not doing that. Never accept all the problems that you find in a home inspection and just say to yourself, it's okay, I'll deal with it, once we close. No, ask for a credit or a concession, or you can even ask the seller to repair any issues that come up. You don't have to accept everything that shows up on the report and say, it's okay, I'll deal with it. Because look, this is what we were dealing with in the pandemic market. People were just like, it's okay. I'll take it. It's fine. I'll deal with the problems, whatever. It's okay. Only to find out they end up spending thousands of dollars after the fact making those repairs. We are now in a market where we can go back and ask for repairs. You can, or you ask for a credit. I'm dealing with that stuff right now as we speak with buyers that I'm working with. There are certain things that came up, and it's even things that were beyond what we limited it to, that we discovered could be a potential issue. And we went back and asked the sellers to repair it or ask for a credit. We can do that. So never accept what is on that inspection report as like that you're buying a house just like that. If there are problems that are major concerns, you go back and you ask them to repair it, ask for a concession. This one's super important. Never agree to see a house with a realtor without a signed buyer agency agreement. Oh yeah, this is happening. I talked to 2 buyers last week that told me that they were working with realtors and they didn't have a signed agreement. Are you kidding me? Why are we doing this? Realtors, what are we doing? We got to do better with this. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, oh, it's just really there to protect the realtors. It's not for the buyers. Oh no, hear me out. If you're working with a realtor and you don't have a signed agreement, you go look at a house and you see a house and you love, and you say, oh, you know what? I love this. Let's make an offer on it. And then the realtor finds out that the seller is not offering to pay the buyer agency compensation, and only for them to turn around and say, hey, you know what? I actually take a 4% commission fee. So that's what you're going to have to pay me if you want to buy this house. Okay. Had you had this conversation before you even went to look at homes and talked about what the commission is going to be, because it's negotiable, you would have that in writing, and that would be it, period, end of story. So that's what you agree to pay. So when you have that in writing, it's clear as day. You know what you're going to be willing to pay your buyer agent. And here's another thing too. You need to have that agreement in place. So say if you do want to ask the seller to pay for your buyer agent, or if you want to split it, you have to have that agreement to show the seller, this is what I agreed to pay my buyer agent. I agreed to pay them 2.5% or 3%. Would you be willing to pay that or pay for half of that? They're not going to just take your word and say, hey, you know what? I need you to pay for my buyer agent. If you don't have an agreement, they're not even going to consider that. So don't go look at houses without that signed buyer agency agreement. And realtors do better. Get those agreements signed before you take your buyers out. And speaking of realtors, if you are in need of one, whether you're selling or buying a home in your market, I offer a free service where I can help find an agent in your market. So do me a favor, scan the QR code here, click that link down below. Please make sure you completely fill out the form that will come to you to your email, because I need to know the city and state of where you're either selling your home or where you're looking to buy. Once I receive that information, I will then be able to get you connected to one of my referral partners in that market. Another thing, if you are thinking about selling a home, or if you want to buy a home here in Northern New Jersey, and if you would like to work with myself and my team, there's another link down below. Please click that link, fill out the form, and I will happily set up a Zoom consultation with you. The next one, never agree to buy the house without a clear survey. Now, I get it. Getting the survey done, it can be pretty expensive. And if your lawyer is recommending it, your real estate agent is recommending it, there's a reason why. Don't rely on the seller's survey. Sometimes the home seller will have a survey that dates back like 20 years. We don't want that. You want a new updated survey. Trust me on this one. So even if the survey was done in the last 10 years, do yourself a favor, get your own survey of the property. It is so super important because you don't want to be met with any surprises once you own the home. Okay, the next one, skipping the final walkthrough. Never skip that. I've heard this before where people are like, it's fine. I'm just going to go right through the closing table. I don't need to go to the walkthrough. Are you kidding me? You need to do the final walkthrough. You got to walk through to make sure the house is still in good condition. You need to do the final walkthrough. You want to make sure that not only did the seller trash the house, you want to make sure they didn't trash the house, and you want to make sure nothing is broken. Everything is still in good working order. Because if it isn't, guess what you're doing at the closing table? Or you're going to go back and renegotiate things because you've identified problems during the final walkthrough. Never skip that. I can't believe I've heard this. Some people were skipping the final walkthrough. We're not doing that, guys. We're not in the pandemic market anymore. It's shifting. No. Do your final walkthrough. Never make an offer sight unseen. No. You don't want to just make an offer based on what the pictures you see online. You have to physically see the house first before you judge on what you want to offer. I had two recent examples of this. And one was on one of my listings. I had the agent call me and she said, my buyer loves it. They're going to go in at ask. They might even go above ask. They think it's beautiful, all the things. Okay, great. P.S. They went to physically look at the house. Now, while they loved everything about the house as far as the updates that were done to it, turned out the house was actually too small for them. It wasn't enough room, not enough bedrooms. And after seeing it, they felt that, you know what? I don't think it's worth the list price. We might have to go in a little less. So here's another example. A buyer I was talking to saw a house online. They were like, we want to go like $75,000 over asking on this house. I'm like, how about we look at the house first to see if it's even worth $75,000 over asking? Because it may not be. I get it. Everyone has ingrained in their head, the home buyers are saying to themselves, I have to overbid if I want to get this house. Pump the brakes. That's not the case in every market right now. Have your realtor run comps to make sure that you are not overpaying. I get it. You want the house, you want to make sure you get it, but don't go in there emotional and say, I'm going to overpay by, $50,000, $100,000. No, look at the comps and physically look at the condition of the home. Is it worth it? Are there things that need to be done that you're going to have to put more money in? And it really doesn't warrant a price of, $50,000 to $100,000 over asking. So see the house first before you decide how much you're going to offer. The next one we're never agreeing to is you're never going to agree to a sale contingency without a time limit. And what do I mean by that? So say the seller still has to go find another place to live. They have to find another house to buy. And they'll say, hey, you know what? We have a home purchase contingency. So you, the buyer, you're going to have to wait until we find our next house. Yeah, we're not doing that unless we have a time limit on it. And you got to make sure it's written in the contract. So you can put in the contract that, you agree to buy the home and you're allowing the seller to go look for another home, and they need to be under contract by a certain date. Because if you don't put that time limitation in there, then you're going to be tied up in this house for months. The seller could take forever to go find another place to live. So you need an out. So make sure your realtor and your attorney stipulate that in the contract, that if the seller is going to be buying another home, they need to find that home and be under contract by X amount of date, or you're walking. The buyer can back out of the contract at that point. Okay, the next one, we're never relying on verbal agreements with the seller. And what do I mean by this? Okay, so say the seller is offering to leave their furniture in the home. They don't want to take it with them. And they tell you, okay, well, how about we leave our couch? We'll leave, the patio set. We'll leave the freezer that's in the garage. And you're like, that's great. Awesome. Or they'll even say, hey, do you want to buy some of the furniture? Okay, great. Get it in writing. Definitely get that in writing. And it's separate from the home purchase contract. We're not including that in the contract. You're going to write up your own agreement between you and the seller, and you're going to identify what pieces of furniture that you're agreeing to take from them, or if you're buying them, you're going to put what the price is, how much you're going to pay for them, and you both are going to sign it. Get it in writing. I can't tell you how many times I have heard this or witnessed it in my own experience where they had a verbal agreement. This happens a lot with patio furniture. I don't know why, but it does. And they'll say, oh, we'll leave the patio set for you. Awesome. And then we show up and guess what's missing? The patio furniture. And they're like, hey, they said they were going to leave it. Did we have that in writing? Did we have it in writing? No. So there you go. Never agree to any verbal agreements. Get everything in writing between you and the seller. This one is super important. Never allow the seller to stay in the home post-closing without a written agreement. Now, this has been very common in the last 5 years because of the limited inventory. And, sellers are trying to juggle the closing of the sale of their home and then the closing of the purchase of the next home, right? So sometimes they'll ask for extra time to say, a couple of weeks or a month to stay in the house post-closing, right? The problem with that is you have to get that in writing. You have to. So you need to get an attorney involved to actually draw up a lease. This is called a use and occupancy, or it's also known as a leaseback. We also refer them as leaseback. So what that means is you're drawing up an actual lease between you and the seller. So post-closing, right? You close, you paid for the house, it's yours, but the seller is still living in it. So you need to draw up an actual lease and to come up with a daily rate that the seller is going to pay you so they can stay there until they're ready to move on to the next home. So super important. Get that in writing. This is another thing we don't want to do like a verbal agreement with. And I'm going to share a quick story with you about what happened to somebody that did that. Years ago, this happened with another realtor. This was not me. This realtor had a listing, right? They were getting close to closing. They were about a few days away from closing. And the seller was in communication with the buyer. They had, nice, decent relationship and everything was going fine. So the seller became too trusting of the buyer. And when the seller was already moving her contents out of the house, he said to the buyer, you know what? If you want to start moving your stuff in before closing, not a problem. Why don't you just start moving in? Okay. So he even gave him access, gave him keys. So guess what happened on the day of closing? The buyer never showed up, never paid for the house, and he became a squatter. Ended up staying in the house. I swear to God that happened. Now, I don't know what's happened since. I'm sure they went through all this like legal stuff to get the guy evicted. But yeah, that happened. So I know that was like opposite of what I'm saying regarding the sellers, but listen, it could happen if the seller is staying in your house post-closing. You need to have a written agreement. If you don't, and that sellers say their deal falls through on the house they're buying, they may be like, what, we'll just stay here until we find another house. So get all this stuff in writing, please. So another thing home buyers need to be aware is that sellers will sometimes do some cheats on items in their home and do their own repairs or cover up some issues that are going on in the house. And if you need to know what those are, you can watch this video right here. Thank you so much for watching me today to get your dose of real estate reality. My name is Jackie Baker, and I will see you next time.